Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we're being joined by Evelyn Whitney, author of Truth Speak, Real Reasons Men and Women Don't Communicate. Evelyn, welcome to the show.
Hi, Paul. Thank you so much for having me.
Are you ready to get started?
Yes, I am.
All right. Question number one. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
The first-time author advice that I would give is to commit to actually writing it. There are so many people who have aspirations of becoming an author, but they're also working other full-time jobs and managing full-time families and things of that sort. And they seem to put the writing on the back burner for long periods of time. So if you really want to be a first-time author, you do actually have to commit to the project and actually write the work that you want to publish.
And what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
I think that's a two-pronged question. One person might have a difficulty sitting down and setting aside the time to write. So overcoming that web of other responsibilities is one of the first things that any first-time author would have to overcome. And the second aspect would be finding a venue. The venue through which the book is published can make a huge difference in how successful it might be.
Absolutely. And speaking of venues, let's talk about marketing, because I know it's always the funnest part when it comes to launching your book. So please share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launch that has worked well.
One of the tactics that I've used is quite easily social media. It's becoming an inevitable part of every facet of daily life. And maintaining a Facebook page, an Instagram page, a Twitter account, and a website are some of the things that you would need to do to get the marketing strategy out for the book projects. And another thing is actually simpler than that. It's word of mouth. People who've read the book have told others about it, and then they contact me and say, hey, I'd like to get another couple of copies, and things of that sort. So between social media and word of mouth, I found those to be the two most effective strategies that I've used to publicize the information about my book.
Well, in regards to the power of word of mouth, too, that's such a great piece of advice. What are some of the things that worked for your launch with that power of word of mouth? So can you give us a couple of examples about how that was able to continue to build momentum with your launch?
The topic of the book, as you pointed out, is communication nuances between men and women. So once people have read the book, they find the information in it to be very valuable, and that's what causes them to tell other people about it. And once those other people read it and find the information valuable to them in different ways, the process just continues. So I think that's definitely the most effective part of the word of mouth aspect of it. The idea that once people read the information, they find it useful and practical to them in improving their communication skills.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned prior to the show, I absolutely love your title and your subtitle because it's just so clear about the whole process. Truth Speak, Real Reasons Why we don't communicate, things we can do better. So it's definitely a title and a subtitle that absolutely captures the attention. And as I mentioned previously, it's also going to elicit a response for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, let's talk about your favorite book. So what is your favorite book, and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
Being the voracious reader that I am, my favorite book changes from quarter to quarter almost. But one of the books that I know that I remember a specific point from was The Good Earth by Pearl Buck. I read that book years ago, and it starts with the wedding of Wang Lung. He's the main character, and he marries a woman who happened to have been a slave in the area where he was living at the time. And as the book moves through the story, it goes through the ups and downs of his fortune and their fortune together and their loss and just the vicissitudes of life, basically, but as they're woven through his particular experience. One of the things that I learned from it, I think the number one thing that I learned from it was reflected in a narrative within the story. Once they had amassed enough fortune to hire servants of their own, Wang Lung and his wife amassed enough fortune to hire servants of their own, he began to be needlessly critical of her. And the way that the scene is described, it's as if he's sitting back, almost reclined, as he looks at her and nitpicks various things about her personhood, about her body, about everything. He's just taking that moment to be critical in his mind. And that's a contrast to the way that they began their relationship. When neither of them really had anything, they were too busy, it seemed, to be that critical of each other. And I remembered that because it makes the point of how riches can sometimes be toxic to a relationship. And only when they amassed enough fortune to hire servants was he not busy enough to actually look at her and begin being this critical. I remembered that, and it was a profound notion for me, even at the young age when I read it. It still holds with me today because it was written so vividly as to his physical position and his mental position as he critiqued his wife, when before they had all of the resources that they now had, he would not have done that. And I learned from it even then that for as much as people pursue riches, it can be toxic. It doesn't have to be for everybody, but it can.
Yeah, and that is such a great point, because I always feel everything is an amplifier. And
yes.
when things happen like that, it really does amplify someone's strengths, but it also emphasizes their, I guess, areas of opportunity, so to speak, with their weaknesses.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. I completely agree.
And for a final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
My favorite quote was presented to us by George Bernard Shaw. It is the quote that says, "The single biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it has taken place." I love that quote emphatically because it makes a startling point that when people converse, there is a belief inherent in the action of conversation that the other person has received what the speaker intended to say. While the speaker believes that their message has been received, and the receiver believes that they have heard what the speaker was trying to convey, both of them could be wrong, and neither of them could know it. And that's profound. How do you address a problem like that when people don't know that there is an inherent misunderstanding? It usually doesn't come out until later, in sometimes very unfortunate circumstances. But that is one of my absolute favorite quotes, because it just underscores the idea that when you're speaking to a person, it's easy to assume that they will receive your intentions. Mm-hmm. And both of you walk away thinking that you've understood each other, but you really haven't. Thus, the illusion of communication has taken place, but neither of you really know where the other is. And that is a huge, single biggest problem, as his quote says.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's very powerful.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank him.
Well, Evelyn, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show today. What is the best way for people to find you online?
I have several means that I can be reached online. My Facebook page is Evelyn Whitney Books. I am taking friend requests if anyone is interested and wants to send me any questions they might have. So Evelyn Whitney Books is my Facebook page. E. Whitney Books is my handle on Twitter and Instagram. And if you'd like to order the book, it is available at my website, evelynwhitney.com. That is EvelynWhitney.com. And those are the means through which I can be contacted for further information about the book.
Evelyn, thank you once again for being on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Thank you, Paul, so much. It's been a fantastic pleasure to speak with you.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how you can be featured in our brand new Get Published business book, go to getpublishedpodcast.com.